Hi everyone, this is Dominic. I'm your Northeast Florida realtor with Florida Homes. Let's talk 1031 exchange. As an investor, if you're selling a property, there is a high chance you might have some capital gain taxes to pay to the IRS. However, if you're planning on purchasing another property, there is a 1031 exchange that's very popular. What it allows you to do is to defer taxes and roll your money from one property to property or properties that are like kind. However, there are extremely important rules and deadlines that you cannot miss. And a lot of investors are confused. As you know, the IRS is not the most flexible institution, so you gotta make sure you follow the rules. So let me go through them really quickly. That way, it'll help you a little bit. Just remember, you gotta talk to your tax advisor. I'm not a tax advisor. This is not a tax advice.
Let's grab.
Here are some rules and deadlines. So property must be an investment property for business use, so no primary residences. You cannot touch the money, and the third one must use qualified intermediary. These two kind of go together, and they probably trick more people to fail than 1031 exchange than anything else. A lot of times we'll get a phone call, and being in Florida, a lot of our clients start out like up north and they're trying to sell their investment property and move it to Florida. We would get a phone call, for example, I'm selling our property, we're about to close on it, and then I want you to start looking for properties. And I always ask questions like, did you tell your realtor? Did you tell your attorney? Did you tell your tax advisor that this is 1031 exchange? And most people do, but sometimes people would go, well, I don't know. I don't need to tell them because, I'm doing the 1031 with you. They don't need to know. It doesn't matter because I need to get my money so I know how much I have to spend. It doesn't work that way. The moment you touch the money, the 1031 exchange failed and you pay taxes on it. There's no changes to that. So the most important thing is you got to use the qualified intermediary in order not to touch the money. Then we go to the deadlines. You have 45 days to identify replacement property after closing, and you have 180 to close. It is not 45 plus 180. 45 is within 180, so you don't want to miss that. What is important to know, that's why you need to work with realtors that do 1031 exchanges or understand them. So for example, we know that at 45 days, if you select a property and, for example, it fails not even out of your own fault, it doesn't matter. You failed the 1031 exchange because at 45 days, whichever properties you have selected, those addresses go. If you don't have it on the list, you don't have the 180 to close on another property. But what you need to understand, if you're working with a realtor that knows the process, we can buy you a bunch of time, because what we can do is when you list your property and the moment you go into contract with your sale, we can work on sales here subject to while your sale is going and close your 1031 exchange days after your initial closing, which allows you for any type of changes without maxing out the deadlines. So for example, if we start working and you have replacement properties, there are 3 of them, and for example, throughout the process, one of them fails through for any reason, we can close on a 2 within, say, 4 days of closing as soon as the intermediary is ready to transfer money. And a third property, we can reselect it and still close it by the 45 days. If it fails again, we can do it again as long as we don't go past the 45 days. At that time, you're stuck with that property, right? But we do it ahead of time so you have choices, and that way you never should go all the way to 45 days. So we kind of buy a bunch of time. Very important. Now, next one is replacement must be like kind. So you can replace 4plex with 2 houses. You can replace a townhome into duplex, or as long as it's residential, as long as it makes sense, you're fine. You just cannot buy something that's completely unrelated. And then lastly, you gotta use all the money that you have. There are some nuances to it. If you had a loan, you gotta also take a loan. If it's all cash, you gotta use at least the same amount. There's more to it. Do remember, I am not a tax advisor. This is not a tax advice. I'm just realtor telling you what we see. So I hope that helped you a lot, and please do subscribe. And if you need ever to purchase a property in Northeast Florida, we are here to help. If you're using 1031 and you have any questions, let me know. Again, Dominic, Florida Homes. Thanks so much. Bye bye.